Welcome to the Today Counts show. Today does count because it impacts, it influences your tomorrow and the day after that and the day after that. The Today Counts podcast is sponsored by the generous donors of the Lead Today community. I'm your host, Jim Piper. Well, hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Today Counts show. Of course, this is Jim Piper. My guest today is Damon Nailer. And Damon lives in Louisiana. He lives down south, as we say. And he is the director of a nonprofit there by the title of the Children's Coalition, Northeast Louisiana. We're going to be talking about a lot of things today, mental health, children, helping children, helping the parents. But we're probably going to also be talking about some of his strengths as a leader, and he shares that even in his consulting practice. But Damon, hey, welcome to the show, and thanks for being with me today.
Well, thanks so much for having me, Jim. I'm so excited and elated to be with you and just ready to get into it. So I appreciate you for having me as a guest and looking forward to it.
Yeah, me too. Hey, let's talk about the Children's Coalition first. What is it? What do you guys do? What's your mission? What's that all about?
Yes, well, the Children's Coalition as a whole is all about creating communities where children and families can thrive. And I'm the program director for one of the agencies called the Family Resource Center. And so what we specifically do is help parents who, when the children are removed from the home, they're referred to us for mandated parenting so that they can get to a better place and get their children back or reunify with their children. We find that many of our parents that come to us is actually because of either mental health issues or substance misuse issues. And so they come to us, and like I say, we have different parenting programs that we have. We have a short one that's about 3 weeks, and it's called Triple P, and that stands for the Power of Positive Parenting. And then we also have one called the Nurturing Parenting Program. And it lasts, the way we do it, is about 8 sessions. So we're talking about 8 weeks. But, depending on the parent, their need, their situation, we decide on which program would be best suited for the parents. And so, like I say, when they come to us, we love on them, we nurture them, we build them, and we encourage them and give them a lot of great insight and wisdom and techniques and strategies for being better parents, but not only better parents, but better people overall. We say that if we can make you a better person, then by default, you're going to be a better parent. But not just a better parent, you're going to be a better spouse, a better co-worker, just a better human being all around. But yes.
Yeah, Damon, where are the parents? I'm sorry, where are the kids when they're separated? Where do the kids go when they're separated from their parents?
Well, they always try to do what's called the least restrictive environment. And so what they do, the first thing they'll try to do is put them with relative placement. And if they can't find a relative who's qualified and meets the requirements and interested, then unfortunately the children have to go to the foster care system. And so they become,
I see.
yes, they get placed into foster homes. And in most cases, they're fortunate that the parents are able to get back on track and get them back. But in some cases, the parents lose their rights, and those rights are terminated. But yes, that's
Yeah.
what happens.
And what are some of the reasons why these kids are taken from the parents?
I say it's either going to be abuse or neglect. And in most cases, as I stated, we're looking at neglect. Most of our parents, as I stated, they come because of either substance misuse or mental health issues, where they have an incident, where they're doing drugs and the child sees it, or they go out on a binge, leave the child at home. You have all kind of cases like that. And then a person with a mental health, of course, if they're not on the medication or they just have a bad event, get triggered and they have an episode, then in many cases CPS is called and the child is removed. But there are very few cases, especially with my experience, that have been abuse. I could count definitely on 2 hands because I've been doing this about 6 years now. But it's mostly neglect, and as I stated, it's because of the abuse, substance abuse, or the mental health problems. But yes, sir.
Yeah, that makes sense because if it were physical abuse, I wouldn't think that you could have that quick of a turnaround. if ever, really. I mean, that's kind of like a line that if you cross, at least to me, that sounds, pretty dangerous to
Right.
put a kid back into that place.
Yes.
Damon, how did you get involved in this in the first place?
Well, I was being an entrepreneur for quite a bit there on the janitorial business, had already come from an educational background where I was an elementary educator. And so it was me doing my consultant work. And I came in to do life skills presentations with the group. And of course, at the time, they didn't have the money to pay the life skills presenters, but they were like, look, we'll give you the opportunity. You can share your information and your content and your courses with our clients. And I was like, okay, that's a good deal. And once I came in, there was someone who I knew who worked with the organization, and they were always interested in starting a nurturing parenting program. I'm sorry, nurturing fathering program. And so when the lady saw me, she was like, "Oh my God, you would be a perfect fit for our nurturing fathering program. I've been looking for a young man to do it. Would you be interested?" And so we negotiated, and I came on doing that part time. And at the end of that year, a full time position became available, and so I stepped in to do it full time. And like I said, did it for about 4.5 years. And so from 23 until up until the end of 2020, I'm sorry, from 22 until the end of 23, I was just doing consultant work with them, but now back full time as the program director. But yes.
That makes a lot of sense because last time you and I talked, I think we talked about the idea that you have a communications background and expertise. Is that right?
Right, right. Yes, it's all about communicating and making those connections. And yes, I just doing that. I love that work because I believe, when I analyze it, the key to communication is interpretation, though. And in other words, being able to not just hear, but also to feel and having that empathy and compassion. This fits and aligns perfectly with what I'm doing, and being able to be a great listener is the key to communication, because some people, they communicate, but it's just to hear themselves talk and to hear themselves speak.
Mm.
But when you get to the nitty gritty, when you're talking about getting to the core and the essence of communication, is being able to hear others. I always say, hear me, see me, feel me. So, hear what I'm saying, understand what I'm saying, see what I'm saying, and then feeling. In other words, what is the emotion behind what the person is saying? And when we're able to discern and to detect and have those deep conversations, it really it takes our relationships to higher heights and deeper depths. You're able to have those very enriching and healthy relationships and very profitable relationships when you're a great listener and you're able to communicate effectively.
Yeah, one of the things I've shared over the years as a principle or strategy for parenting is for married couples to really work hard on having a great marriage, and that tends to overflow. But last time you and I talked, you explained that is it wrong to say that even a majority of these parents that we're talking about are single parents? They're single mothers, single fathers.
Yes, and you hit that on the head. They come from those backgrounds, the single parent home. And we know statistically how the impact of the father, well, especially the two parent homes, but the impact of the father being present, how much of a significant impact it makes. But yes, most of them come from those single parent homes, and the parents are single parents themselves. Very few times. I mean, I definitely, that would be one hand that I could count on where the couples, were married. But yeah, in most cases, it's single parents who are struggling with the various issues. And I know we also kind of touched upon the fact that a lot of the parents, their background, they have the trauma that they faced. We talked about the adverse childhood experiences, the ACEs, and how they come with unhealed trauma. And oftentimes that's what triggers the mental health, and it also triggers them to try the substance abuse to kind of self medicate and help themselves, to cope. But yes, yes,
Damon, it concerns me a little bit what you just said about dads not being present. Everybody knows that a mom is invaluable and irreplaceable, but there really is something about father wounds, isn't there?
right.
Do you do you how does your organization deal with the cases where it's mom and child, and particularly a boy, I would think, but
Right.
maybe it's not just the boys. But how does your organization fill that gap, or is that not the mission, the specific mission of your organization?
Well, yeah, that definitely is a part of it, and I think what really um, drove them to want to do the nurturing father program is that void that they saw that needed to be fulfilled, that needed to be addressed. As a matter of fact, the last time I checked, I would have to recheck, but we were like the only program in the state doing the Nurturing Fathers program, and so that's why it was such a great initiative to do to address what you're talking about. Because fathers are important, as Solomon said, the glory of the children is the father, and it is critical that the male is in the home, especially for his disciplinarian, and just having that authority in within the home is critical, like you said, especially for young boys, because they get to an age where they need a male and a positive role model that they could look up to and emulate. And if their father's not there, then we know that some of the role models that they're seeing are not very positive and not leading them in the right direction, but are kind of adversely impacting them and leading them in the wrong direction. So it's very important that the father's in the home and that he's present, that he's actively involved in the child's life. And I always teach the fathers, hey, presence is for us, providing versus presence and you being there. And I always ask people, look, if I asked you to think back to your childhood and to tell me the material possessions you received, the objects, and then I say name experiences you had. Which one would you be able to name more of? And in the majority of the cases, they're able to name those experiences. And I just try to just encourage fathers, be there. Even if you struggle, providing your presence is what's going to make the difference. Because when those children get older, those current experiences I tell them will translate into later memories, and you want to make sure you're creating those special moments, things you do maybe on a weekend, trips you take in the summer, just the little things, being there at the ball games, being there when they're having award ceremonies at school. All of those things are important and vital to a healthy relationship, and just vital to children. Seeing dad there in the audience makes a difference. It really does.
My imagination tells me that you're really involved in trying to break a cycle, um, because some of the things that you're sharing with me, I probably take that, Damon, a little bit for granted because I had a father, in my life. He was very present in my life. As you said, he was an example. He was disciplined. He represented stability. And, he would even play with us where it was, where it made sense, and support and discipline and forgive, and, all of those kinds of things. So if this isn't being provided to these children, then I'm making the assumption that the parents probably didn't see much of that either when they were growing up. Is that too far of a reach, or is that what you're seeing?
No, it's accurate. That's very accurate. And in many cases, especially when it comes to fathers, they're repeating a cycle that they saw. And as you stated,
Mm,
if a father grows up without a father, then in many cases, there is very likely that they will shirk the responsibility of parenting as well. But I always tell them, the ones who come, first of all, it's admirable. Thank you for being here. This is a wonderful experience, and I don't know, how us men run out on as a child, as a teenager, I always wanted to be a father. While my friends
mm.
were talking about it, they wanted to be rich, they wanted to live comfortably, they wanted to drive this type of car, live in this type of home. I'm sitting in the car and talking about, I want to be a father, I want to be a positive role model. And it was because I lacked it. I had older brothers, and thank God for them. But as you stated, it's something about the father that's not there that has that impact on you. But I wanted to, what I did though, I call it, I say I derive positive motivation from a negative situation. in that I didn't I didn't rewrite that narrative, but I decided I'm going to change the narrative with the help of the Lord, and I'm going to go in a different direction, and I'm going to be there for my children. They won't be able to say what I'm saying, which is I grew up with a father, without a father, so they'll be able to say, look, dad was there for me. My dad was in the home. He was there when I was born. He was there all through high school, through adulthood. He's still there. And that is the testimony that I want to have. And that's the, impact that I always wanted to make, to be that present father, to raise my children and be forever in their lives. But yes.
How often do you use your story as an example to teach and to give hope to those that you're talking to? Because I would imagine that when things are really broken, I think there's a correlation between developing faith in a higher power, developing faith in a personal God, developing faith in a God that might even know your name and might even care about you when you can't even relate to that at an earthly level. I would think that those things are connected. Do you, do you experience that as well? That some of their roadblocks to faith is that they don't really experience some of the basic things that God put in place in His engineering when He created our world.
Right. Absolutely, Jim. Absolutely. And so what you're saying is you don't have that physical model, right? And it's easier to catch on to physical principles than it is spiritual principles. And we know we could use the physical things, the tangible, to explain the unseen and the supernatural. And when you have that physical in place, it's easier to understand. But like you're saying, when you don't have that physical, it also causes you to struggle spiritually, because you're like, okay, what about the loving father? I didn't have a loving father. So how do I make that connection with Christ and, having faith in a higher power when I've never really seen it modeled? But, that's where faith really comes into, where now, I always encourage people, especially men, you're going to have to be the trendsetter and the navigator. It's like me, I really didn't have the model, but guess what? I'm going to have to figure it out. And what I know about God is that when you have a passion, He will give you the power. When you have a passion, He'll give you the resources. He'll give you the education. He'll give you what you need when He sees the appetite and the passion to go, and especially in a positive direction. And when you're trying to do something that's good and right and wholesome. And so, it takes more, because you don't have that example, but all things are possible, through Christ. Yes, yes.
I guess somebody could take this too far, but what I'm beginning to recognize is that in the context that you're talking about, you're a much more qualified candidate than I, because they're able to see that you came from a place where you didn't have, but you are becoming. Whereas even though I could talk about the positivity of having a father, I can't identify with not having a father. So there's a gap. There's a gap there. The name of your organization is the Children's Coalition. We've been talking so far about this area that you are in charge of, where you're trying to educate, rehabilitate, even to some degree, in that process, the mind and the behaviors of some of these parents. And we'll come back to that, Damon. But what does the Children's Coalition do for the children, and who are these children? I mean, I would imagine with that name, you're doing stuff with kids too.
Right. And so we have, like I said, the different departments. And so we actually have an early head start, and we're over the early head starts in the area, several of them. And we have one on my site here with about 6 to 8 kids. And so we, manage those early head start programs. We also have what's called an ancillary teaching certificate program, where people who want to work in centers and childcare centers can come and get the certificate and be qualified to be able to do that. We have a childcare assistance program for people who need help with childcare assistance. They can come and they can get that help as well. But yes, like I say, we just have all kinds of stuff. We have a family garden that on like once a quarter we invite the community out, of course, the kids, the families, and we pick things out of the garden. We have different activities, different community service providers come out. And so, like I say, we do a bunch of things, with the family as well as the kids. And then we also help to train people in with the child care to get their to get assessments and to get their licenses and stuff like that. So yes, like I say, we do a whole bunch with the children as well as the family. But yes.
But okay, so the picture I'm trying to get though is you're working with parents. The kids are, in best case scenario, been placed temporarily with relatives. So these kids that are coming to the center, and let's talk about the community garden there.
Mhm.
Is it those same kids that have been taken out of the home, or is this a different group of kids from the community?
So it's open up to the whole community. So in
Okay.
many of those cases, the children aren't able to come unless the foster
Okay.
parent brings them. Now you do have some fosters who do bring the kids out, but like I say,
Okay.
it's open to the whole community. And so, man, you have families from all over, different
So
backgrounds coming.
okay,
Yes,
so you have many streams and rivers flowing into your center, different stories, different circumstances. Okay,
yes, yes.
that makes sense. All right, great. Now, when you talked about the neglect, that was the major cause of the separation between the parent and sometimes parents, but mostly the parent and their child. You spoke of mental illness and substance abuse, and we obviously know what substance abuse is, but the mental illness that I think you're referring to is those that have been maybe diagnosed bipolar or dissociation um, condition. I'm not sure what the right wording is for that,
Yes,
or
yes,
like even ADHD,
yes,
anything that kind of um, basically takes the person out of play to care for the children. Though those seem, from a layman's perspective, I guess I would go, ADHD and disassociation could, I suppose, get to a pretty radical place where a person could be there physically but really not be there. Um, Whereas ADHD might be the opposite of that. I don't
right,
know.
right, right,
And,
right.
and then bipolar, of course, in its extreme cases, can actually be dangerous, right?
Yes,
I
yes.
would think. So I assume that while you're doing the educating, they're meeting with somebody else, psychologist, psychiatrist, to help that. Am I using my imagination correctly, or what does that look
No,
like?
you're absolutely accurate, and that yeah, they have to basically get those other services. A lot of the mental health, and then counseling. A lot of them are also in rehab for the drugs. But yes, they have to get those different resources and help so that they can be stable enough, especially mentally stable enough, to come and really experience the parenting like they should. Because if they're not sober, if they're not on their meds, and oftentimes we have those cases where they aren't, and we just have to deem them unfit for the classes until they're able to get either in the rehab or get back on their medication so that they can resume. Because like you said, their minds, if they're not there, it's just a totally different person. But yes, they get those outside resources and outside assistance from, like I said, the different counselors here, the psychiatrists, psychologists. Yes.
This is very significant work that you all are doing, and it can't be done in masses. I mean, this is sheep by sheep, lamb by lamb,
Right.
person by person, family by family. It burdens me, frankly. Just thinking about it. I know there's a term. I don't know if it's a psychological term or if it's a um, but it refers to positive and negative experiences that children go through.
Right.
I think adverse child experiences is a term for um, negative experiences that can create longer term issues
Yes. Yes.
for kids who turn into adults. Is there anything being done for the children who, besides being put in a foster home, besides trying to get them back to their parents, knowing that adverse experiences can, uh, can pay it forward in a
Right.
negative way, so to speak. Is there anything that we're learning to do while they're still children as a way of um, bringing healing to that child before they carry that into their adulthood? Does that question make sense?
It does. It does. And so with the ACE presentation, and just not just the presentation itself, but one of the strategies we deal with are the protective factors. And so we're looking at the positive capabilities, attachment, and belonging. And so, and then community and cultural processes. And then what they found is that when you have those things intact, where the positive capabilities, whereas you know your skills and your talents, and you also boost the self-esteem of your child by giving them praise, by giving them pats on the back, high fives, and just encouragement, things of that nature. It really helps them with their self-concept, which is how they think, and their self-esteem, how they feel. And we combine those two and we get their overall self-worth. And it's all about boosting that child's self-worth. That really helps, even if they've come from hard places. And not look, and not just the children, but adults as well. We need these
Yes.
emotions. We have these needs as well. And so also,
Yeah, because their parents are dealing with adverse childhood experience themselves, most likely, correct?
right, right.
Yeah.
So they're trying to heal as well. And so the thing about the protective factors, that they serve as prevention for those who haven't had the issues, but they also serve as intervention. And so, they found that as far as attachment and belonging, if you were to have at least one person who what they would call caring, and I always think about the heart, and competent, I think about the head, being able to give you insight and wisdom, but also were compassionate and just loved you and were kind, that made a tremendous difference. And the more people you had like that in your life, it really increased the potential of you being very resilient and still living a positive and thriving life. But I always tell when I do the seminars that sometimes in life you run into people, they have the competency of the head, but they're cold. But then on the flip side, sometimes you run into warm people, but they just don't have the insight to give to you. But when you have a person who has both, oh man, it makes a tremendous difference in your life. And they found through the statistics and the studies that the more of those people you have in your life, even if you experience the trauma, it increases your capability of being resilient. And then just as far as the community, the cultural processes, just having that village and those surrounding you, a good support system, and being able to have people you can depend on, you can trust, because of course you have to rebuild that when you've been traumatized and you've experienced abuse and neglect and different things like that. But when you are able to find that your community, your tribe, and your group, and they're supportive of you and they help you, then all of those things play a great part in your health, your healthy living. I always say your healing, health, and happiness is up to you. But of course, you do have people who come along the way, and they are able to walk with you on your journey, to be an encouragement, to be a blessing, and to lift you up there and help you to get to where you need to go. But yes.
I like how you described caring as related to a heart issue and competency as a mind issue or head issue, a brain issue. How closely is healing related to resilience, building resilience, learning how to be more resilient? How closely are those related?
They're very closely related, because when we get sick or we're harmed, it really takes something from us. It knocks us down, if you will. And so resilience is that capability of getting back up. So in order for us to heal, whether it's mentally, emotionally, physically, or spiritually, we have to have that resilience to get back up and to try again. And sometimes with your healing, some healings take for years. I could personally testify of that, having different aches in my body, different symptoms, different circumstances, and just in pain for years, and then finally getting healed. So it takes some resilience to say, look, every day, man, I got to get up and deal with this pain. whether it's, in your back, your stomach, your arm, your neck, whatever, but just to wait on your healing and to do all you can. And that's, well, I think an advantage we have, as people of faith, is just believing that God is going to heal eventually. We know that some healing is just processional and it takes time, but you have to have that resilience to get up and to still believe that one day I'm going to feel better, whether it's mentally, emotionally, spiritually, or physically. But there is a huge tie and connection there that, it takes that in order to really be healed and to overcome and to be whole.
Yeah, from a spiritual perspective, we can teach that with faith, I have been healed, I'm being healed, and I will be healed. But it usually takes a breakthrough, for us as people to get a hold of that, and it takes a resilient, mindset that we participate in that process. Again, when you and I talked prior to this recording, Damon, you mentioned to me. I don't know what's the right term, if it's acronym or acrostic, that you use this term called spices,
Yes.
and that's kind of part of your curriculum. I was really interested in that, and I was hoping we could talk about that a little bit more. I've already written down what they stand for, so I'll kind of tee you up. So spices is spelled out, and the S represents spiritual. What is it that you're able to teach in the amount of time that you get to work with these folks about the spiritual side of life?
Well, according to their curriculum, when they look at spiritual, they're looking at just belonging and being connected to a
Yeah.
group. But of course, we delve into the belief in a higher power and believing in the supernatural, that God is here and that is there's a world beyond ours. So of course we can't go, just too deep into it, but we definitely touch upon that. And if there are people who are believers in the room, we can delve into it more. But just getting
Let
them
me,
to know. Go ahead.
yeah, let me ask you a question about that, because
Mhm.
I get that. I understand the context,
Right,
um, and your purpose there isn't to necessarily evangelize people
right,
to your faith, but how do we talk about the possibility that there is a God, and not relate that to hope about the future,
right,
meaning that, I mean, are you are you able to plant seeds at least that say, I mean, I think about the text, the biblical text that said God has placed eternity in the hearts of man,
right,
and my loose sloppy um, way of explaining that
right.
to people, interpretation, that's the word I was looking for,
Uh-huh.
is that, we just know that we know that there's more than this, and
Right,
that there's going to be more,
right, right.
to come, though that might be dim and blurred
Yeah,
for us. Because I'm trying to think that, so here you are talking about spiritual, and
right,
this good but secular organization
right,
is saying, well, it's about community, it's about belonging, it's about,
right.
all of that. And I'm going, man, it's such a shame, because it falls short.
Of what
It
it,
falls
right,
short of, yeah. There's a reason to
right.
suffer through. There's a reason to fight through. There's a
Right.
reason. There's a reason, right? And
Yeah,
it's a
yeah,
spiritual reason.
yes, yeah.
Anyway, I was just interested in how you navigate how
Yeah,
you
what
navigate
look,
that.
man, it's a part of me, and basically
Yeah.
everybody who knows me already knows it's coming. Look, it's coming
Yeah,
out some
it's
kind
just
of
like
way.
when, yeah, it's just like my business consulting, right? I mean,
Right,
when people are checking me out, they go to my LinkedIn page. Well,
right,
the gig is up. You can see who I am by just kind of like,
right, right. We can't hide that, right? We cannot
yeah,
hide that.
yeah. If you
We're
can't
the
have
salt,
that, then
we're
they're
the
not going
light.
to call me,
Right, right,
right?
right. But yes, like I said, we delve into it, and we've had some deep conversations. I know probably about 2 years ago when we were doing the spices lesson. It's amazing that we're segueing into that. But the group, when we asked about, okay, which one of these areas you feel you're deficient in, you need help with, and most of them said the spiritual. So I was like,
Okay,
okay,
hold on.
well, go ahead.
I'm gonna let you keep talking about that. So let me let everybody know, though, the other ones. So SPICES stands for spiritual, physical, intellectual, creativity, emotional, and social. All right, this back to you, Dan. What you were saying about
Yes,
where they feel least equipped.
Right, right. And so the majority of them were like the spiritual side. So I said, man, you know
Yeah.
what I'll do? If you guys are interested, we can do a Zoom session, or we can come online and do Zoom outside of here. And would you
Yeah.
believe it? I started to do Zoom Bible studies with the guys from the group. And so,
That's
like you
great.
say, just, using God's wisdom there and the appetite, of course, not pushing anything, but they were interested, and we
Yeah.
were able to share and share the word of the Lord with them and everything. But yes, just taking advantage of the opportunity when it presents itself. But at the same time, there are a lot of scriptures that I quote, and sometimes they don't know, sometimes they do. Of course, I tell them, hey, this comes from the Bible, or this is a proverb from Solomon, or something like that. But yes, we find ways to incorporate it there, because how can you not, right? But
Yeah, over the last 10 years, my strategy in just talking to human beings in general has changed,
mhm.
mostly because I think I've become more of a human being in the last 10 years
Mm,
than I was in my previous. How old am I now? 55. So
yes,
I'm in my 65th year. So let's
yes,
just
sir.
say somewhere around the age of 50, I realized, hey, you know what?
Mm.
I'm not going to make it out alive.
I know that's right.
I'm human,
Right.
and maybe I should just take a deep breath and relax. And
Oh,
so
yeah.
what that did for me, Damon, is I have this premise now where
Right.
I just assume that everybody is a believer,
Right.
or they want to be a believer. And
Mm,
so instead of the days in my 30s and my 40s where I was trying to probe so that I can intellectually come up with a crafty speedway
right.
or lane,
Yeah.
to get into conversations. I just speak to everyone as if I've known them forever in this
Right.
way, and just assume that they do believe, and if they don't believe, that they want to believe.
Right. Right.
At that, and it has really been refreshing for me. So even though, I'll make I'll be teaching, I'll be making a presentation of some sort,
Yes.
and like for example, I'll say, I mean, since we've been made in the image and the likeness of God,
Yeah.
and He's a creator, I think that translates to that we're problem solvers, and I'll just keep rolling.
Right.
you
Right.
know
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
and,
Yeah.
never, no one's thrown a tomato at me yet, so I think,
Right.
I think it's working. But anyway,
Mm,
so when you talk about the physical, what
mm.
is it that you talk about in spices?
What we're talking about here, what do you do as far as of course, we're talking about, making sure you're taking care of your body, as far as exercising, as far as your diet, as far as getting
Mhm.
rest, and just trying to see what the those our clients are doing. Do you go to the gym? Do you do strength training? Do you do, aerobic exercise? Just what do you do? And then encouraging them, if they're not doing anything, to kind of just start slow, start somewhere, but to make sure they're paying attention to their physical needs, because our bodies are important to us. It's important to everything. But yes, making sure that they're doing something physical. And the most important about the spices is all about not just them meeting their needs, but also helping their children to meet their needs. And
Oh, that's
one
good.
of the main components of the program, or the construct, is nurturing yourself. And so what happens when a parent nurtures him or herself, then it qualifies the parent to nurture the child. Because in order for me to give, I must first have. So if I don't have love in me, if I'm not imparting that, if I'm not taking care of myself, then I'm not as qualified to take care of my child. But when I know how to minister to myself, to make sure my needs are met, then hey, I can do the same thing with my child. And so, like you say, the physical part, just teaching them to be an example of living an active lifestyle, living a healthy lifestyle for yourself, but more importantly, for your children, so that they can pick up those healthy habits and be, live a healthier lifestyle themselves. So yes, that's what we get into when it comes to the
That's
physical.
that's good, Damon. What about the
Awesome.
intellectual?
Yeah, intellectual, talking about growing your mind. So we're talking about reading, studying, researching, just challenging your mind and increasing your intellect. And a lot of people don't realize that that is a need. And sometimes just being, say, uninterested, like say for instance with a job, not being motivated, not being interested, looking for your passion, that kind of all connects together. And so when you're able to feed your mind intellectually, and you're stimulated and you're always trying to learn, and you become an avid student of life, then it makes life more interesting. You have that thirst and quest and thirst for knowledge, and you go on a quest for it. And as you search and you learn more, it's like you want more. As you're eating the knowledge and the insight and those nuggets of wisdom, then it helps you to grow, and it takes care of that side. Because some people are disinterested. It's not that they don't want to learn, it's just they haven't found the thing that they're passionate about. Because once you find your passion, typically you do want to learn more and more about it, and you have that hunger and appetite for it. But in many cases, people hadn't found that. And so they just feel as though, well, no, I don't like to read, I don't like to study. And it's because they just hadn't found that particular thing that interests them and would make them want to grow.
Yeah, I think that's true for most of us. I mean,
Right.
when I was in high school, I finished towards the bottom of my class. And when I got to college and got to
Mhm.
actually choose what I wanted to, I graduated at top of my class. And then when I went for my graduate degree,
Right.
once again, I got to choose what I wanted to, I was interested in, and I graduated top of my class.
Yes. Yes.
The other thing I think is interesting is that I think a lot of folks probably don't realize how closely related the spiritual, physical, and intellectual part of who we are, comes together. I
Yes.
mean, when we do exercise, we generally feel better, and you'll talk about this later, but
Yes.
emotionally,
Yes.
um, and it as my dad used to say, when I was a kid, and he could tell that I was getting cabin fever. He'd tell me to go outside and blow out the carbon,
Yeah.
and it just kind of reminded me of the old muscle cars, where
Right.
you would
Right.
just open up the throttle and
Yes.
just
Yes.
let it all out, get all the carbon out of the carburetor.
Right. Right.
But and then when we stimulate our mind, it's the same thing. We start thinking about things, and we usually start thinking about more positive things when we stimulate our mind, because we're using a tool that God has given us to
Yeah.
solve problems. And to solve problems, you have to go into the world of positive imagination.
Yes.
And so that's interesting.
It's
But
good.
I'm really interested in what in the world do you teach in this category called creativity?
The creativity. So there is where we teach people about expressing themselves. So like you can express yourself in music, in dance, in cooking, in art, just any of those type of artistic expressions. You're able to use your creativity. And like I say, it could be music as far as writing or playing music, playing instruments. And then like I say, it could be in the way you dress, in the way you like cooking different meals and stuff like that. So the creativity, sometimes people just would limit it to the arts, but we expand beyond that. Just whenever, whatever way you like to make something and to create something from scratch, that is you sharing your creative juices with the world, just being an innovator and doing something different and new, and that you feel is your own. So that's how we teach them to cultivate and deal with that side, the creativity.
Good.
Yes.
And the next letter is E, and it stands for emotional.
Yes.
What angle do you take there?
Definitely, I always talk about the scriptures there, meditating to build yourself up emotionally, speaking those positive affirmations, putting
Okay.
positive vibes out there, giving that encouragement, to yourself and to your kids, encouraging yourself, patting yourself on the back, positive self talk. All of those things help with inspiring and encouraging you. And yes, the emotional side to pick yourself up, and like we said, encouraging them to do that to their children as well, to build them up emotionally. But
Yeah,
yes,
our words become our worlds, right?
yes, yes.
And the word became flesh.
Amen.
Um,
Yes, sir.
that's yeah, very powerful. And then finally, you have social. Um, I mean, obviously, when people are engaged with one another, they're generally going to be healthier
Yes.
people. When they isolate themselves, then they're going to be in trouble.
Right.
That
Right.
leads towards the dark side of the room, so to
Exactly.
speak.
Yes.
Well, Damon, the other reason we connected, and I know we've spent a lot of time doing this, just because I apologize, I'm very interested in
Yes.
this kind of work. I think it is extremely important. I just think
Right.
about, I'm going to get all kind of weird and altruistic here, but Imagine making a difference like this in just one person's life.
Mm,
Um, it's it's to me it's extremely significant. But
yes.
I wanted to talk to you about communication. This seems to be a strength of yours. Just
Yes.
even listening to you articulate
Yes.
and you're very agreeable. You're very easy to talk to.
Yes.
But you teach about communication. What are some of the things that you have learned and given the opportunity that you teach about
Yeah.
in regards to the application and why it's so important?
Yes. Yes. Well, there are many, techniques and stuff that I deal with, but I'll say three as far as I would say sending or feeding, right? Which is helping people to know that you have no communication, limited communication, and then miscommunication. And so, with no communication, that means nothing said. Like, say, for instance, if people are asking or trying to find out about something that happened, we could say a scandal, right? And in many cases, you have a person, they don't say anything. Well, when that happens, that gives space for speculations and people to come up with all kinds of narratives and put all kinds of stories out. And so, if you don't mind that, that's fine. You can stay silent, and sometimes you can just sit back and watch and just find it humorous, the different things that people will come up with. But if you don't want that to happen, then we definitely want to say something. But then there's limited communication, whereas you don't put enough information out there. So now, although you put information out there, it's still the questions of who, what, when, where, why, and how. And I could give an example. Not too long ago, somebody had texted me and they were like, okay, they want someone to come and to do interviews. They're gonna pay. Okay, so then the question is, what entity wants me, what days, what time, how much, exactly what I'm doing. But that's what happens when you have limited communication. It generates more questions than answers. Then of course miscommunication is when inaccurate information is put out. And so now you have confusion, now you have chaos, now you have conflict because information was put out was inaccurate. And therefore we want to make sure that when we do share information that we give enough facts, enough information, and we're as accurate as we can be with the information that we present. And this is not just with personal, but also, public, just, we could say on a micro scale as well as a macro scale. If we're able to incorporate those principles as far as the sending and feeding, then it will make a difference. And then, of course, we get into the eating, and I won't give all of it, but there are really 6 components of listening, and most people don't realize that. Most people don't even realize there's a difference between listening and hearing. Well, when we're hearing, we're talking about just the audible sound, the noise that we're hearing, the vibration. But when we listen, it incorporates 6 components, and hearing is one of them. For instance, right now, I'm listening to Jim. Jim is listening to me. But if next door in my office here, if something fell, guess what? I would hear it. Well, as I stated, there are 5, the 6 components of hearing or listening, and I give one, which is paying attention. So right now I'm paying attention to you. And so I'm listening. You're listening. But if something fell in next door, then I would hear it, although I'm not paying attention to it. And there are, other components of it as well, but the key is making sure to pay attention, give your undivided attention. One thing I always emphasize is mindfulness, and that's where you're just focusing on every little part of your life, every little activity. So, for instance, we're here, we're giving this our all, we're consumed with this. Once I leave here and go to the gym, I'm not thinking about what I'm doing at home. I'm not thinking about what happened at work. I'm focusing on exactly what happened at the gym. And so learning how to just hone in and just focus on things really enriches your experience with them. And like I said, just communicating these different concepts and tips to people is very important. And one other tip I share that I always tell people is when you're trying to make those connections, especially with communication, always remember commonalities connect, but differences divide. Commonalities connect, but differences divide. And this is whenever you meet somebody, there are going to be differences. And the way we're programmed in many cases, we're always looking at what makes us different. But what I had to do was reconfigure and reprogram my mind. Now, when I meet people, I look for what makes us similar. And once I find that, I begin to build on it. That's where we build. And in many cases, that's where we stay because I communicate with people all over the world, genders, nationalities, sexuality, all of that. And so I have to know what is the thing that brings us together? What is our purpose? What connects us? Because if not, we'll focus on what makes us different. And so that's where the chaos comes, and that's where we're fussing, that's where we're arguing. But if we could focus on the thing that has brought us together, the unifying element, then that will make the difference. And I promise you, once I've started doing that, it made a tremendous, difference in my relationships and my connections. But yes, just a few tips.
Yeah, and listening to your story a little bit here, a little bit there, reading between the lines, you have come a long way, haven't you, sir?
Yes, indeed. Yes, sir. Look, you have read
Yeah.
between the lines accurately.
And the stuff you're sharing right now is also valuable. Though we don't have time to break it down, I wanted to ask you a couple questions about the communication part. I think about the people that I work with, the people that I help. I think about my family. I think about my friends. I think just like you said, the micro, the macro, right? So I'm thinking about Fortune 500 companies. I'm thinking about small businesses. Small doesn't mean like a sandwich shop.
Right,
I mean,
right, right.
small can be, $5 million business
Yes, yes.
is considered small in some scales. Thinking about small churches, big churches, as I said, families. Doesn't it take a certain kind of discernment? So, and did I get the three categories right? No communication, miscommunication, and limited communication. Were those the
Yes,
three? Right.
yes.
Okay.
Those were the 3. Mhm.
So what I'm trying to fill in my gap here is, you know, where in this construct do I decide that sometimes I can give out too much information, and how does one figure out whether something is too much communication or not enough communication, or if anything should be said at all? What might be construed as hiding, what might be construed as I mean, everybody is everybody. I'm exaggerating now. A lot of people are cynical. So as soon as you say something, there's more today that believe you less than maybe generations gone by. I mean, I don't think I'm making a radical statement to say who believes the media anymore, completely and totally. I mean, if you're on the right, and now I'm talking about politics,
That's okay. It's all good.
unfortunately, but when you're on the right, um, and you've grown up a little bit through all the turmoil that we've been through, most recently as a nation, not just race, but the whole COVID situation, the presidential stuff, the Supreme Court. I mean, gosh, I mean, everywhere you touch, how states are responding to the federal government, how the federal government. I mean, we have divisions now. We've always had divisions, but
Yes.
we have divisions now where
Right,
it's almost like as soon as you open your mouth, you're taking two steps back.
right.
So if you're on the right, and you've gone through all of this with an open mind, whereas if you're a conservative,
Mhm.
maybe 10 years ago when Fox said something, you believed it.
Right,
And if
right,
you're on the left and CNN said something, you believed it.
right.
Now, even if you're a conservative on the right and Fox says something, you're going, well, gosh, I think we're just exaggerating to push our agenda. And
Right.
then if you're on the left, I would think you'd go, gosh, why is it that when I listen to CNN, it is
Hmm.
clearly about this, and I listen to Fox, it's clearly like that, which tells me that both are extremely slanted.
Right.
And now you've got new news agencies coming out that claim
Yeah.
to be, the objective
Right.
source.
Authority. Hmm.
And if a baby boomer like me
Hmm.
is cynical, dear God, what are the younger generations? Do
Right.
they even listen to any of this? I don't.
Right.
Well, they live in the world of TikTok
Yeah.
and Instagram, so that's their news source, and
Right.
and that changes from every flip of the thumb,
Yes.
right?
Yeah. Right.
Not the
Right.
channel, the thumb.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm looking at the construct and I'm going,
Mhm.
yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
But how does one discern nowadays how much you want everything to be accurate,
Right.
but is it not possible that you say something and should not have said something,
Yeah.
or you because
Hmm.
the demand is to be completely transparent,
Yeah.
but sometimes transparency is reckless.
Right.
Uh,
Right. Right.
maybe I'm trying to think about what I just said. I think that it can be reckless. Certainly in a parent-child relationship,
Right. Right.
it can be reckless. I
Yes.
mean, right? I mean, this is crude, but when you're doing sex education, do you want the school to do it? Do you want to do it?
Right.
And I would think most parents would want to do it, even though it's
Yeah.
uncomfortable to
Yes.
do it.
Yes.
But explaining it and demonstrating it, well, there's the difference, right?
Right.
You're
Right.
not going to demonstrate it,
Yes. Yes. Definitely not.
are you?
No, definitely not. Definitely not.
Oh, okay. So that would be like too much communication, or
Yeah.
hazardous, or
Right.
stupid, or whatever word we want to use.
Right.
But I'm very interested in what you're developing here, because I do know, because I mean, we call it spin doctors, right?
Right.
And so
Right.
then we got people that are spinning information
Yeah.
to suit their own message.
Right. Right. Right.
And I mean, I got a 911 call from a client this morning,
Hmm.
and he described to me a situation, and so the situation was over and done with. Nothing we can do about now except for learn from it and maybe try to correct. Yet he's also in a structure that is somewhat political, like most structures,
Gotcha.
and there wasn't a clear path.
Mm.
There wasn't a clear path.
Right.
So at some point, we needed discernment to figure out how we wanted to communicate,
Yes.
and it wasn't easy. So my point is, with all of that,
Mhm.
if you haven't developed this even further, boy, I think you can, because I think the world needs it now
Yes, sir.
more, more than ever. I think companies need it,
Definitely.
churches need it, schools need it. I
Right.
mean, we've got to be honest with each other.
Right.
But I'm kind of wondering, how far is our road back? How far are we away from believing what we hear
Mhm.
ever again? Um,
Yeah. I think we're very
I'm
far
just, I'm
from
just
it.
throwing it.
Yeah.
I'm just throwing it out there, brother.
Yes, sir. Yeah. And you know what? I agree with you. I believe we're so far from it. And the problem is there's so much, as you
I,
stated
I, I mean,
eloquently.
I'm sorry. I'm
Yeah.
sorry. One more thing.
Yeah.
I mean, I always, when I was younger, believed the police,
Right.
and I am pro
Mhm.
police.
Yes.
I
Yes. Yes.
every Sunday, because of what I do,
Mhm.
I run into 7 or 8 officers who I love and care for.
Right.
But when I hear about something that has happened,
Yeah.
I just have to tell you, I don't believe what the victims tell me, and I
Right.
don't believe what the officers tell me.
Right.
So
Right.
where do I go?
Yeah. Like they say, truth is somewhere in there. And the
Yeah.
problem that we're facing is the heavy dose of misinformation. And like you said, there's not a lot of true transparency. It's like always hiding something behind your back, or, you know, um, twisting something, just kind of nipping and tucking, cutting and splicing truth. And
And
that's
that's
the
what
problem. Yeah,
and that's what bad guys do. That's why when a
right,
cop tells you to show your hands,
right,
you better show your hands because bad guys don't show their hands.
right,
And
right.
so when we communication is like a gun.
Yes.
It, I'm sorry because
No, that's you're right on, man. And like you say, it's a lot of times it's not what you say, but how you say it. But at the same time, you want to make sure just personally that you're being as accurate and as forthcoming as you can. But like you say, different situations warrant, I would say, the no communication and limited as well. But of course, you want to always avoid miscommunication. But
yeah.
sometimes it is good to not say anything because, like you said, anything you say is going to be misconstrued. I don't care how you say it, you can say it nicely, softly, gently, choose the correct words, but it's still going to be come out as you fussing or
And
you
then,
yelling.
yeah, and then other people can tell you're being careful about the words. So
Right,
then they have a conspiracy theory about that. Or
right,
if you run into me on Sunday morning in the
right,
lobby and you say, "Hey Jim, how are you doing?"
right, right,
And
right.
what you mean to say, I
Yes,
believe,
yes,
is it's good to see you. I hope you're well.
right.
But in our culture, you put it in the form of a
That's
question, and so
right.
now I'm going to lie right to you. I'm
Yeah.
going to say, "Everything's good. How
Great, right.
about you? Everything's great." You know,
Right,
so,
right, right, right,
because I thought, well, what if I start dumping on him? He's on the way to taking his kids somewhere, and
right.
I say, "Oh, you know what? I'm glad you asked. I could use somebody to talk to right now." And you're going,
Yes.
"Oh, crud."
Yeah, yeah, I know, right? Like you say, just dump everything on you. You're like, oh my goodness, I wish I wouldn't have stopped. But yeah, but like you say, it just depends on the situation. And sometimes, as far as limited communication, I always say, of course, like if it's something where it's going to warrant a deeper conversation and there's lots of details, you give just enough that you say, well, look, we'll talk about it in depth later, but these are just some of the basic facts, and that kind of helps you because I know a lot of people I deal with, they love a lot of details and facts, and all the time you don't have the time to get to that. So I say, look, for right now, here's the gist of it. These are the few facts, and this is the summary of it. We'll delve into it later, but I need you to go with this, what I'm sharing with you
That's
right
good.
now, so you can be aware, and we'll get
That's
into it
good.
in depth later. But
So
we
we can even, yeah, so we can even put boundaries around our communication. We're able to say,
right,
what I'm telling you right now is accurate. It may not be everything, but I don't know everything right now.
right,
So here's what we're going to do. This is what I do know,
yes,
and you
yeah,
can trust that.
right,
And then we're going to come back once we know more and update on more. So it's almost like we know cynicism is out there. We know people want more,
right,
but we can give, we don't have to know the whole story.
right,
um, we don't have we don't have to know the whole story to still give them accurate information, even
right.
if our whole story is we know something bad happened, we don't know the whole story.
Right.
We
And that's the safest thing to do. Like you said,
Yeah.
just give what you know. And then as you,
And maybe, yeah, then maybe ask, can you please give me some time to get the
right,
facts, and
right,
I will bring them back to you, something
right,
like that.
right. And see what's happening these days, though, instead of people doing that, being patient and having a discipline, they're fabricating facts and they're creating stuff. And so now, oh,
Yeah.
you told me it was such and such, but come to find out it was this. Well, the person just made
Yeah.
up the stuff instead of just saying, look, I don't know everything. This is what I know. This is all I can give you for right now. And, be patient with me. I get more information for you. But some people, they don't want to do that. And so they just keep on and on and on. And the next thing you know, everything is misconstrued and everything is
Yes.
confused. Yeah.
Sometimes I think it would be helpful if we confess what we didn't know before we talked about what we did know.
Right.
And say, well, I know that I'm thinking of the media right now. I know
Right.
that people are hurt. I don't know
Yes.
how they got hurt, and I don't know how hurt they are. But I know it's
Right.
a serious situation, and we're going to see what we can do to find out information
Yes.
and not withhold it.
It's very seldom that they
Well,
do that. They always got to give
yeah,
numbers. And a lot of times it's
yeah.
inaccurate.
Oh, and yeah, then they're never right. They're never right. You know,
Right.
yeah. There's yeah. Hey, you have spent a good amount of time with me.
Yes, sir.
I think what we learned a lot about
Yes, sir.
what you and your organization are doing to help children and parents come
Right.
back together in difficult situations, and we
Yes,
got
sir.
a little bit of insight as to some of the unique gifts that God has given you along the way.
Yes,
And you've
sir.
obviously done some thinking about communication, person to
Right.
person,
Yes, sir.
organizationally, and I think you have a lot to offer there. And I encourage you to continue
Yes,
to
sir.
dig in and develop, because there's a
Yes, sir.
great road ahead of you, sir. And
I
thank you so much
appreciate
for
that, Jim. Yes, sir.
contributing to who we are and what we do.
Yes, sir. Thank you so much for having me. I thoroughly enjoyed your wisdom and insight as well. It's like they say, iron sharpens iron. So I feel blessed as well. Yes, thank you.
Yeah, I love talking to people who like to talk about good stuff. If you're not part of the Lead Today community, let me invite you. Go to leadtodaycommunity.com. That's leadtodaycommunity.com and sign up for Monday Moments. It's a weekly email that will encourage your leadership. Again, thank you for joining us today, and thank you for telling a friend about the Today Counts show.